Hello, welcome, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this very special, informative episode of Kaz's Fighter Jet Roundtable Tournament. Today, we'll be going over some of the rules and specifics of the boss fight episode, which will be the next episode of FJRT. So, without any kind of further ado, let's go ahead and zoom on into the watchtower on the roundtable. Take a look at some of the aircraft you all will be seeing in the boss fight. So, for the sake of simplicity, we're going to go ahead and start here with the AFX-05 Mordred GN. This is basically going to be the main aircraft that those who decide to fight Spriggan Squadron or Spriggan Team are going to have to deal with. It's actually one of my own designs, modified primarily for the boss fight. You can see they have the GN designation specifically because they're running with GN drives, which anyone who's used them knows that they can be very powerful. They also have NMB Product 30 engines. Now, these aircraft are going to be what primarily constitute Spriggan Squadron, and since they don't have to obey by competition rules, they get to do some special things. For example, they have 3 pulse lasers as their primary layout. These weapon layouts, I should add, are they're more or less final. They may change slightly, like their missile selection might maybe change to have a little more variety. But other than that, these layouts for all of these craft are more or less finalized. You may see the hint of the cheat window down here, and it's because I hacked gravity to be 0.8. Otherwise, the Leviathan likes to basically destroy itself because KSP physics are weird, brah. Anyway, so taking a look at this here, the GN does have 3 pulse lasers as its primary weapon layout. It does not have a gun other than those. I mean, yes, technically it has the F-18 cockpit gun, but that's turned off. It does also have a little 30mm turreted heavy machine gun that it uses in the back to fire at enemies, just like the normal 50 cal special weapon. So it has a little bit of rear defense as well as main weapon defense there. And you can see it's packing a whole lot of missile heat. It's got 3, 6, 9, 12 missiles, maximum missile layout for these crafts. In general, I didn't want to go over the maximum limit just to kind of keep things, you know, at least somewhat on a regular playing field for these. You can see they got a Banshee there and Sidewinders of varying capabilities. They do also have anti-missile missiles on this, so if you think you're going to cheese them with Banshees or EMP missiles or something, you're going to want to think twice about that. In any case, these are very capable, very fast, very deadly fighters. They are primarily what they're going to be going up against. For that, let's go ahead and take a look at what the other team will be going up against. So over here with Kaz Kerman for scale, we have the Leviathan UAV. Nothing particularly special about these things other than that they're very tiny. Again, Kaz Kerman for scale. And that these are going to be what the other team is going to be facing. As I mentioned previously, the boss fight will actually be broken down into 3 separate fights. One fight will be against the Mordreds over here, Spriggan Squadron. There will be 4 enemy aircraft and 4 aircraft that will be fighting them. And then the other team, the other group of fighters, will be going up against a bunch of these little Leviathan UAVs. They are very light on the part count. I believe they're sub 50 parts, even. I think they're like 48 parts or something. So they're very, very light on the part count, which means theoretically I can spam them. So the goal is to have 2 UAVs per each craft, and so that'll be very interesting. There'll be lots of gunfire going on. I want it to feel that you're very much taking on an arsenal of enemy craft there, so you don't just walk up. You know, it feels like a suitable challenge that you're overcoming. As far as loadout for these little craft, they can move quite well. You can see they're using Sylph Canards as their primary mode of control surface there, both for their vertical and everything else. So they move all right. They're not too janky, actually. They're, despite the fact that they're using the Sylphs, they're actually fairly tame. Although, here's where things are. They don't have any missiles, but they do have 2 turreted machine guns as their weapons. That's it. No missiles, no pulse lasers, anything really weird, just turrets. So that means that in order to take down these things, you're going to be relying on missiles and, of course, your own guns. These things are actually supposed to act as flying turrets. That was their primary design focus. Effectively, the Leviathan uses these to shore up its defenses while it goes in and assaults targets. Anything that comes close to it, well, it has to deal with these flying turret platforms, basically. So you guys going up against these, keep that in mind. You're going to have to deal with some drones. If you want to try and use something like an EMP missile to knock out multiple drones at once, you can, but do keep in mind that EMP does work in an AoE, so you might potentially also hit your friends. Anyway, these are not particularly tough little craft. A few shots from stuff will drop them. Most of their stuff are clustered. A missile shot, a good shot with 30 mil will base, or 30 millimeter will just erase this center portion here. Again, they're not supposed to be particularly tough and or tanky. So, however, they will have numbers on their side, so do keep that in mind when you are planning on fighting them. So, again, 3 fights broken into different sections. There will be 2 teams of, well, there will be 2 fights of 4 teams. So we have some craft, let's say like the K-11s, the Pegasus drones, where they're basically identical but they have different names because they have slightly different AI settings. Stardust will, in effect, have to pick one of the drones for his thing. So he'll have one K-11 whatever drone, Pegasus drone flying around. However, in cases like Geoplex and I believe it's 32 in Geoplex with the Parallax Saturns and such, those will be able to both be in because they are separate individuals and I don't want to leave them out. So, maximum you're going to have 4v4 here versus the Spriggans, but where you're going to have the lopsided numbers is going to be against the drones, mostly because I can add or remove drones very easily, they're light on the part count, etc., etc. So if you come up with the bigger number of participants, you're going into the drone fight. 4v4 is what you're looking at for fighting the Mordreds. In any case, any aircraft that make it through the gauntlet of fighting both the Mordreds and the UAVs will then go on to fight the big boy. And this is the big boy. This is the Leviathan class Warbird, and it will be your primary antagonist for the boss fight. Anything that survives the Spriggan Squadron and the UAVs will be going up against this monstrosity. And just for scale, you can see the entirety of... you can see just how big it is compared to the standard size Mordred there and the drones. This thing is absolutely huge. I wanted to make it bigger, actually, but if I made it any bigger, it couldn't take off of any runway in the game. This can only take off on the desert runway here, actually, because it's so dang big. This wing clips the spaceplane hangar if it tries to take off at the KSC runway. As far as armament, this is broken down into 3 separate sections. It has, don't worry too much about all those lasers, you shouldn't have to fight them. Unless you get within ramming distance, in which case it will open up with its anti-ramming system lasers. Because it's so large, the AI has a tendency to ram aircraft into it without really trying, and that causes some problems. So it has an anti-ramming system. Basically, the system targets anything that gets within a set distance and lights it up with lasers and kills it. This includes missiles, this includes airplanes, this includes everything. Anything that gets too close gets blapped by a laser, and that's just to try and keep things, you know, safe. Its primary weapons, however, are these little Sea-Wiz turrets. Pretty cool, 30mm Sea-Wiz style turrets. These may or may not change. Either way, that's the only kind of armament that this thing is looking at for its primary weapons, whether it's, it'll be some kind of projectile-based gun. I'm not putting missiles on this, and other than those, I'm not putting any kind of, like, fancy-ass turrets on it. It does have an anti-missile laser system, which is its primary defense against missiles, and then if the missiles get super close, it does have the anti-ramming system lasers that will basically end that. Again, this is, it's kind of supposed to be like a giant carrier, actually, for the UAVs, but I couldn't get the weapon UAVs to work correctly, so they get to be their own separate fight. That's why they have landing gear, so they can take off under their own power. Huzzah! So, effectively, that's how the boss fight's going to be breaking down for that. You're going to be having 2 teams. One team will fight the UAVs, one team will fight the Spriggan Squadron, and the survivors of both of those fights will then be pooled together to fight against the Leviathan, regardless of how many aircraft that may be, which means it could be a little laggy. But to be clear, by survivors, I do mean potentially survivors of both. We'll see how that goes. As in, if for whatever reason aircraft survive against the drones, but a couple of the Spriggans make it through, the Spriggans might come to assist in the Leviathan. Should be fairly interesting to see how it actually plays out. One final thing that I would like everybody to keep in mind for this fight, I am pushing the start distance from 8 kilometers in the BD Armory start here, from 8,000 meters basically. We're pushing it to 16 kilometers. So we're looking at 16,000 meters for the competition distance. That means you have a better chance of getting to use any kind of long-range weaponry you may have, both against the drones and against the Spriggans. Same thing goes for the Leviathan. Admittedly, the same thing goes for the things you're fighting. They also have that benefit. However, I figured it would be a nice change of pace to give everybody more distance to work with. After all, if we're going off of the idea that these aircraft are coming in from somewhere trying to assault a target, it only makes sense that they have more space to work with. So, the competition distance will not be set at 8,000 as it is right now. It will be set to 16,000. You're going to be having 2 teams. One team will fight the Leviathan UAVs, one team will fight the Spriggan team, and the survivors of those fights will then go on to deal with the Leviathan itself. I wish everybody good luck, and, well, you guys are gonna need it. Until then, I've been Kaz, and happy building.